Hey guys, what's up? It's Spartacus here, and today I'm going to run through how to build Control Warrior based on the meta. So you can go to sites and there's going to be a bunch of lists of, oh, this is the best Control Warrior, oh, this is the best Control Warrior, but it's important to understand which cards drastically change which matchups when playing Control Warrior. So I'm going to run through the whole deck building process of the deck and then discuss, cards you can put in depending on what's popular in the meta and what's going to give you the highest win rate. Okay, so just build a warrior deck here. Okay, so there are a few cards you just can't cut. Double execute. Although I've basically tried like every version I could think of, including not running executes. But in the end, I found it's pretty well really difficult to cut them. So double execute, double shield slam. I'm just gonna put in the cards you definitely need. Double war axe. I've tried messing with every single card in here, but these ones just seem really, really core. Double armor smith, double cruel. You need at least one shield block. Double death spike. Can't cut those. Way too important. One brawl and a Grommash. Okay, so those are the warrior cards that you just pretty well, no matter what, you're going to have those in. Now for the non-warrior cards, you're going to have double acolytes in. I've tried, replacements, things like Battle Rage and whatnot. Doesn't work. And then now this isn't Dragon, because I think Dragon might actually not run these, but for the most part, you're going to have Sludge Belchers. You could cut them for another 5-drop, I suppose, but you're not going to find anything better than Sludge Belchers when there's aggro around. Just too good. Okay, and then the last card you pretty well need is Alex. So that's your core 20 cards, really. Tough to get away with cutting any of these. Like I said, you can kind of replace Belchers for something. If you want to maybe just put like a Lotheb in there instead of a Belcher, I guess that's fine. But the matchups where Lotheb is good, like against Freeze Mage and Oil Rogue, combo decks with a lot of spells in their hand, you're really good against anyway. As a control warrior, you're really good against Freeze Mage, you're really good against Oil Rogue, so you don't need that card. It's pretty bad in Warrior, to be completely honest. Oh, and another card, actually, that I found is really tough to cut, but you can, and it'll be my first edition here, is Sylvanas. I think Sylvanas is just so good in a Warrior deck because it's not that bad against aggro, like against decks that flood the board, because sometimes it forces them to trade into it. So it's kind of like a board clear in a weird way. And then also you have the ability to shield slam it to steal something of theirs, so that makes it even better. Kind of the same thing that if you run like Double Shadow or Death in a Priest deck, you're probably going to run a Sylvanas, because you can pull off a cool combo. So you also are going to need a 6-drop at least, and Sylvanas is probably the best. So let's go back. Cards that you can consider and that are pretty important. And we'll just discuss every single little option that you can kind of put into these decks, and what's gonna make it good. It's good against, and so what it's going to be good against and what it won't. Okay, so whirlwinds. I put in one whirlwind these days. You can put in two. A little bit overkill. You'll find whirlwinds are just really poor in control matchups. I mean, maybe not against Paladin. You can get some more value out of whirlwinds against Paladin, but that's about it. Like against, a deck like Priest, against Handlock, against another warrior, Whirlwinds, and even against sometimes Paladins. Whirlwind's just going to be dead cards in your hand, so they're really just, it's better to have one for, Hunters with a bunch of 1/1s, Zoos with all the imps and stuff like that. So it's always nice to have one, but two is certainly not necessary. Now you can replace a Whirlwind with a Revenge if you want. Revenge is going to be a little bit better against control, actually, like against board flooding control. So Revenge is going to be good against Paladin. It's going to be good against Shaman. But the fact is that like against other control, usually your health doesn't drop that much anyway, so it's just kind of a more expensive whirlwind. And then against aggro, it can be better and good. Like it's just situational. It can be better against aggro if in the late game you have it, or in like when they're closing you down and they flooded the board and whatnot, and it's a board clear. But it can also be worse because sometimes you just need that 1 mana to fit in the whirlwind early on to like get rid of their 1 health things. Revenge is probably better against Zoo than Whirlwind, but Whirlwind is better against Hunter than Revenge. So you kind of have to think of it that way. If there's Zoo everywhere, Revenge certainly isn't a bad card, especially since Zoo is a rather poor matchup for Warrior. So yeah, kind of the differences there. Either way, I'd recommend these days only putting in one. There are just one of either or. There are just a lot of better options out there for cards to put into a Control Warrior deck. Okay, moving on up the list. So the Shield Block. I like to put in one these days. Shield Block's just really good against Hunter, basically. And then against other classes, it's actually pretty good against Druid as well, because it allows you to Shield Block and then Shield Slam. But the point is that you kind of have to think of Shield Block in the same way that you think of like Shield Maiden. Like those cards together, you kind of want like 3 of them. You want either 2 Shield Blocks and a Shield Maiden, or 1 Shield Block and 2 Shield Maidens. That way you can get that boosted 5 armor to enable Shield Slams. That's really the point of Shield Block, is to enable Shield Slams, except for against face decks like Hunter, where Shield Block will be really useful. But I like to put in 1. I mean, it just cycles itself for 3 mana, which is not a great deal. So it's basically just, to gain the 5 armor. And you have to just consider how often you need to gain armor, how much armor you need. And when there's a lot of Hunters around, Shield Block's pretty good. When there's a lot of control around, it's not so good. It doesn't really do anything for you. It kind of just limits the amount of deck slots down to 29. So you can kind of use, if you want to put in another threat, which is what I usually do, you can take out a Shield Block. Okay. It's just basically the first card you cut if you need to put another threat in there. Leans it more towards a control matchup. Okay, yes, the Double Brawl. So Double Brawl right now, I'm going to put it in here, because Double Brawl right now is pretty good, because so there are a bunch of decks out there that are just flooding the board over and over. So Brawl's good against Zoo, and it's good against Patron Warrior especially. Usually what you'll find is you'll have like 1 Brawl, and then you'll put in Baron Geddon. Now, that's what I always used to do. Problem with that is that now these days with Patron Warrior, Baron Geddon isn't actually very good. Baron Geddon is better, and it's also, Brawl's on itself is better against aggro. Baron Geddon's better against control. Baron Geddon just destroys paladins and shamans and stuff like that. Those aren't very popular these days. So the reason why Baron Geddon is better is because you clear the board while at the same time developing a threat. Whereas with Brawl, you don't. You just kind of clear the board. So, there's that. But with, Zoo, there's not enough time to get down the Baron Geddon and officially set it up. This is usually the case against aggro a lot of the time. It can do good things against aggro, but usually Brawl is just more effective in that kind of situation. So you kind of want either a Baron Geddon and a Brawl, or 2 Brawls these days. I would run 2 Brawls. You don't have to. You can only run 1 Brawl and just have it right there, and that's fine. I've been doing that lately too as well, because Brawl's frankly a very clunky card in a lot of control matchups, like the Mirror, for example. But with all the Zoos and Patron Warriors, it's rather good. Okay, so where were we? We were at 5 mana here, correct? Okay, so going back. Okay, back up to the last page. Shield Maiden. Shield Maiden's an awesome card. Just gives the warrior ability to get more armor. I like putting in 2 these days. You can put in. You want to have 1. If you're only focusing against control, then Shield Maiden is strictly worse than other 6 drops. Like, for example, you can replace it with Cairn, or Piloted Sky Golem, or Thoracen. But against aggro or mid-range, Shield Maiden is just considerably better than those cards. They're too slow. Shield Maiden allows you to get a 5/5 body out the board while at the same time activating the ability to Shield Slam. It's why I like it more than Shield Block, because it gives you board presence plus the Shield Slam, whereas Shield Block is more passive. So this is just, in general, rather good card, and I put 2 in my deck. Gorehell is meant for a really control-heavy meta, so a lot of control decks out there that are annoying you. This card will actually win you games. I can't justify cutting any of the other weapons for it, unfortunately, though, so you're going to have to probably cut like a Shield Maiden or something out of the 6 slot, Sylvanas, or another card that I'm going to add to this current deck, and that is Dr. Boom. Dr. Boom is just so damn good. It's really tough to justify not putting him in the deck. I only said didn't put him in this deck right now because, you know, there are a lot of threats, and if you want to, you don't have to put him in. You can put in a Ragnaros or whatnot instead. But I prefer Dr. Boom in general. Okay, so other things in the deck. I think I've gone through every single warrior option, if I am not mistaken. Let me just run back through. You can put in Frothing Berserkers, usually just 1 or so. It kind of gives you an interesting burst thing. What you'll notice is this deck is just so many answers in the early game, like just cards that answer things but don't establish a board presence. And it's the reason why this class just has such a rough time against Druid, because Druid will, you know, play things and you'll try to answer them, but eventually they'll play too many and then they'll just combo you down. So if you'd like to increase your matchup against Druid, you could put in, for example, Throttling or 2 Throttling Berserkers. Play something on 3 that challenges their board, which is pretty nice. And then you can use your Deathbite on 4 and eliminate something they have and still have this threat. However, instead of Throttling Berserkers, I prefer to put in... Where are you? 1 more. No, 2 more. Pile of Treaders, the big 4-drop right now. So Pilot Treader is just in there to be more proactive. Helps out against, well, pretty well every matchup, not going to lie. Against other control, it's something else they have to deal with. It's annoying. So they have to sometimes use multiple cards to trade with it. So it gets you the card advantage in that way. And then against aggro, it's a minion that can trade with their minions, and it can be an annoyance on the board. So it's fairly good there. Where it really kills is Druid. Being able to play Pilot Treader against Druid, Druids it's so annoying for them. So you have this card that's proactive instead of reactive, which allows you to get the board control, because in order to beat Druid as Warrior, you have to get the board from them and keep it, and in order to get the board, you need minions. So Pilot Treader just fulfills that role, and I think it's just really, really good in Warrior right now. So that's that. We have 2 more slots left. What else are the options? Okay, so the other options are the big cards. So I'm going to put in a Nefarian. You can basically put in like most threats that you want. So you can put in a Ysera. I'm putting Nefarian over Ysera because with Nefarian you get 2 cards. Ysera you only get 1 immediately. And in control matchups, a lot of the times they'll find ways to just kill either of these cards. Now, Nefarian is vulnerable to Big Game Hunter, but the fact is you have a lot of Big Game Hunter targets already in the deck, so I don't actually mind it that much. And at the same time, Ysera can get stolen by Priest, which is just incredibly painful and something I just can't handle. It's kind of a personal preference. They're both kind of on the same level. Sneeze is the slowest of all of these cards, so you can put it in your deck if you want to beat control. It's just better against control, even though these 2 are also more against control as well. Sneeze is also another option, just sticky and can be kind of annoying. Probably the best in the Warrior Mirror, for example. But I'm going to take Nefarian because it's also not... Sometimes it can be a last-ditch effort against mid-range decks and can sometimes help. Rag is the most aggressive of the big cards you can put in. So basically, what happens is you Alexstrasza them, and then you can hit them with Grom, and then you also have Rag for more finishing damage. So, you know, it's kind of if you really want to go for that bursty approach. I don't typically like Rag that much these days because if he hits the board, he does his 8 damage, but if the 8 damage doesn't like hit the right spot, you kind of just throw away a card because Big Game Hunter is so prevalent, and usually they can deal with it. So I picked Nefarian over him. A little bit slower is Nefarian. Reg's a little bit faster. But that's basically just how big cards work. And then there's KT. You can put in KT, but it's kind of poor because you don't have a ton of minions in this deck. You can put in Foe Reaper if you are really concerned about, there's basically you have the room for the one big threat, and I choose Nefarian, and in this particular case, but all these cards have some sort of merit, and if you decide that you really want to go anti-aggro, this is the slot that you cut and you add something anti-aggro. So something anti-aggro, for example, you can put in an Ooze if you're annoyed with hunters or whatnot. You can put in a Doomsayer if you're getting really annoyed with mech mages because of Mirror Entity. You can put in an Owl as well. There's room for an Owl if you need silence in the deck. I find that you don't actually need silence in Warrior, and I'll tell you why. It's because the big things to silence in the game are like not that prevalent. Like there's what's it called? There's Sylvanas, and Sylvanas can be annoying, but the fact is that your deck doesn't actually run that many minions, and you're not going to have a situation where you have a big board, and Sylvanas is going to get something good a lot of the time. So Sylvanas is just not that big a deal against Warrior. Tyrion gets solved by killing it, and then having, where are you? Harrison Jones. Harrison Jones I put in all my Warrior decks because, and that's the last card in this situation. Actually, I'll be cutting something in a second. But yeah, Harrison Jones is something I put in all my Warrior decks simply because you need him in the mirror. If you don't have Harrison Jones in the mirror, you really lose easily. You also need him against Paladins. He's like, you can't beat Paladins without him a lot of the time. So, kind of, it's just when you have to forfeit matchups if you don't have a card in your deck, I think it's worth just fitting in one slot. It's also fairly useful against Hunter, but not all the time. So, it's another minion. It's got some board presence. I'm actually probably going to cut the Double Brawl because it's just a little bit clunky sometimes. And I'm going to add in another card, Big Game Hunter. Now, I've tried a long time to not put Big Game Hunter in my Warrior, simply because Big Game Hunter, like you already have 2 executes, 2 shield slams, so you should be able to deal with all the big threats, right? The reason to put in Big Game Hunter is more the tempo, so you can, when you have it, you kill something, and you also establish a minion on the board, just so powerful, and that's really important against Handlock. You need a Big Game Hunter in order to beat Handlock a lot of the time. It's also incredibly important in the mirror. Again, just less the tempo in the mirror, but more having another ability to kill, like having ability to kill one of their threats. So you have 5 ways to deal with threats. It's also very important in the mirror. And it's not that bad of a card to play on turn 3 against aggro and whatnot. So that is the list I think I'm currently running from what I remember. If I go over to my other list. Other options. I was talking about anti-aggro things. There's a card that used to be rather popular called, where are you? Unstable Ghoul. It's at the end here. Reason I take, it's basically an Unstable Ghoul or a Whirlwind. The reason I take Whirlwind over Unstable Ghoul is it's proactive, so you can use it to activate Grommash, you can use it to kill things with Execute. Unstable Ghoul is react, they have to run their things in, so you can't guarantee this goes off at the time you want it to. So it's said to be better against like aggro, but I don't even know if it is because they can silence it. Like if they have a couple 2-1s on the board and you play this, they run their 2-1s in, and the result is the exact same as if I just played a Whirlwind. So that's why I find Unstable Ghoul rather poor. I think that's pretty well it for other cards that you'll put into your Warrior deck. So, I mean, like I said, there's Emperor Thorsan. That's another one I should probably talk about. Probably the last card I'll talk about. So, Emperor Thorsan is not that great in Warrior, I don't find. Because in the control matchups with Warrior, you're usually looking to take it long and outvalue them by using your cards to get more value than their cards. So it's not as much of a tempo game. And then against aggro, sometimes you just don't have enough time to play Thorsan. Thorsan can have some uses against combo or burst decks, things like Druid and stuff like that, to help you get your threats out faster and get a board. But that's the only time it's useful. So the two classes I guess would be kind of useful against are Druid and Patron Warrior, as those are the two primarily combo classes right now that Warrior has a little bit of trouble with. It won't matter against Freeze Mage or Oil Rogue because Warrior already crushes those anyway. So Emperor Thaurissan, for the most part, just a little bit underwhelming in Warrior. Although it does get value, there's just better cards to put in that slot. So yeah, this is the deck I think I currently run. The best iteration that I can find of it. But like I said, I talked about all the cards and when you can and can't put them in and kind of things like that. So, I mean, I like having the Piloted Shredders in. They are what I would cut, for example, for another Brawl or something like that. But they're just, usually you get value out of them. So, let me just look to see if that is the list I'm currently running. Da-da-da. Oh, I have the Black Knight in here instead of a Shield Maiden, but that was for a tournament. So, yeah. Other than that, oh, that is, I guess, another thing to talk about. Black Knight, not that great right now. Usually it's just Sludge Belchers around, but if the Taunt Druid becomes more of a thing, Black Knight can be pretty useful. But again, in a Warrior, you have so many ways to deal with things already, with the Executes and the Shield Slams and Big Game Hunter. Black Knight is more of a tempo play, just kind of like the Big Game Hunter and stuff like that. So it's more of a I kill your thing and establish something at the same time. So it's excellent against Druids and stuff like that, but sometimes not that useful. So, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe for more content, more Hearthstone content. I should be coming back with some more videos shortly, and I will see you next time.